Hey everybody, welcome back to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and welcome to a brand new year, 2025, and the beginning of our 13th year of podcasting. This is episode number 186, and our guest this month, I don't think there are too many playwrights out there who don't know the name Gene Kato. Gene is the mastermind behind Next Stage Press, an online boutique publishing house that has risen to prominence over the past few years. Gene has created a showroom for hundreds of playwrights to begin marketing their creative opuses in hopes of productions, fame, and immortality. Starting your own publishing house is not something to be undertaken lightly. The thing that I guess most people are going to know you for, at this, besides your writing, of course, is starting Next Stage Press. And it's not like putting up a website. It's not like, producing a play for, a couple of months. This is a many years, long time, massive job. I'm sure you thought about it an awful lot before going ahead with it, but what ultimately convinced you to dedicate so much of your life to doing this?
It really was a numbers game, actually. This company started in 2009. And like I said, I had owned a theater company here in Denver, and some of my plays had we'd worked them into different seasons. I was sending them out to Samuel French and dramatists at the time, and all that. And it really just became a numbers game. And I've been fighting that numbers game for a couple of decades because,
Right.
at that point, if you didn't have access to New York, West End, stuff like, places like that, then you could just forget it.
Sure.
And because I think on the average, they publish probably 50 plays a year. And with half of those things, over half of them having had commercial runs in New York City, I mean, there would have if you didn't live in New York and have access to that and, potentially could get something up in Manhattan, you could just about forget it, because then you would have to deal with getting into the Lork theaters around the country and all of that. And then it's just almost impossible to do.
There were just so many hoops to jump through, and so many people did not have access to those sorts of things because DPS and Samuel French required that you be produced a number of times with glowing reviews. And I mean, there's so many of us playwrights out there that do not have those credentials, so it's almost impossible to get published.
Yeah, and I had a couple of plays that were done here in Denver that got good reviews by the Denver Post, and sent those along with it, and it still didn't matter. So I mean, it's just so. Finally, that's why when I just started this, I figured that there would be more people that would kind of be in the same boat that I was in. And I knew that, again, I think on the first, well, I can talk about this whenever you get into it, but when we set up the first website, from the old Next Stage Press website when it first started, one of the things that I actually put in that was, New York is great, but what if you don't live there? That doesn't mean that every play that comes out of New York and every play that's published by the big guys is fantastic. It's not. It's such a subjective thing. I've read plays that the big boys have published that I've hated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
And and there are. I just knew the vast majority of shows were being produced outside of New York. So I mean, I couldn't have been the only person that was struggling with that. Or so the moniker went up on Next Stage Press that it's still there today. It's Plays Across America. And that's how I kind of started it, because I wanted to kind of give myself at the time whenever I first started, but then try to find like-minded individuals from all over the country that, could at least come together. They come together in one new publishing company to where start trying to drive people to that place, so that those plays that were just kind of stuck, desk drawers and all, they would have a light of day. I'm not really concerned with whether or not plays have had productions.
Right.
And that's kind of one of the things I think that is a little different. It might be a lot different from Next Stage Press from the other publishing companies. I don't care. Whenever I read it, if I like the play and the play speaks to me and it's a good story, then there's a very strong chance that, somebody else may be able to pick it up and see it. And it may be able to get another performance because it's now housed in a place where people can start to learn to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that, and it may never. I mean, I have playwrights that are produced and they sell scripts hand over fist. And then I have plays that have sat here that have not sold one copy since 2009.
Sure.
And a lot of that is mostly because a lot of amateur playwrights, and I'll use that term, and even some that make money. There's this idea that once you're published, that the work is done, and that could not be farther from the truth. Because it's like, I hate to break it to you, but
Mm-hmm.
theater company that's trying to stay afloat, particularly we found this out during the pandemic, there are many, many, many more reasons for a theater company to produce Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park than your play that no one knows. And a lot of these theater companies are hanging by thread, and one bad production can sink it, or one production that is not trafficked, with
it's got
people.
a history. Yeah.
Yeah. And and part of that is just the playwrights selling themselves, I mean, you got to constantly sell yourself. You have to, even though I realize a lot of playwrights sit in quiet rooms, writing by themselves and all that, but they got to get out there and I got to learn how to at least at the very minimum introduce themselves.
Well, there aren't that many playwrights who are also business persons. And the art of, congratulations, you wrote a play. It's probably, I hope it's brilliant. Okay, I read it. I love it. Will I ever see it on a stage? I don't know, because you haven't done the work. What's the work that a playwright needs to do? Because that work is extensive in order to not just get published, but to get produced.
It is. And, at the bare minimum, I mean, getting out and, going to a lot of theater, introducing yourself to artistic directors and stuff, just even starting in your community and then working out, because a lot of artistic directors know artistic directors in other cities. So all of a sudden you start making yourself known to one, you might, they may pay attention to what's going on in a particular theater. I mean, I'll use this production that we have right now that's running in St. Pete of Fable. We had a couple of, one of the original performers that was supposed to be in this production is from that area. And that play was actually brought basically down to Free Fall Theater through that one playwright that one actress that lives in New York. But somehow, because of that pipeline of people that know one another, that network, basically, the play made it down there, and now it's having this great run down there, and it may not have ever made it to that stage without that connection. And connections are so important, and that's hard. And I get that. Years ago, whenever I was writing before the company started, I mean, I was sitting quietly in my apartment whenever I was an undergrad, quietly. If I wasn't doing a show at the university, then I was sitting there quietly writing. I wasn't out. I wasn't out meeting people. I grew up in the Houston area, and I went to school in Huntsville, which is about an hour north of Houston. I would sit there in my apartment on the weekends writing, and when I probably should have been down in my hometown, going to some theaters a little bit more down there and catching some stuff on my off weekends. But it takes a while.
Sure.
It is because it's an ongoing thing. It's one of those things that you can't ever stop, because you can stop whenever you're dead. So.
Well, I mean, the time you spend not writing is the time you spend not creating. Even though you're going to see somebody else's play, even though you're networking, that is still time not spent putting words to paper. A lot of playwrights have that fear sitting in the back of their head saying, should I bother and go do this? I might miss, this brilliant epiphany that will, make this play the perfect thing it should be. So it's hard to gauge putting the business end in sync, in concert with the creative end.
True, it is. I think that, of course, we live in the age of smartphones now, where they basically run our lives. that recorder feature that you have on your smartphone, if you have an epiphany whenever you're out and you're away from your keyboard or whatever that you're writing on, use that like crazy to hold on to your ideas.
Yes.
Because you can always come back to them. I mean, all scenes in the rewrite process get gutted based off of something that people wrote down that they came up with another idea that worked better. But
Sure.
you can, how many people come up with ideas whenever they're in the shower? You can't type while you're in the shower. And
I do.
yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of it is just using technology to kind of figure out whenever you're not sitting behind the keyboard. But my God, you've got to get out and you got to support other people and other theaters. That's the big thing. Here's another thing. If you don't go support other people, you cannot in turn expect people to support you.
Exactly.
It's just not realistic.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And if you're not going out, because there's a time for everything. You can't write 24 hours a day. And of course, it gets expensive to go out. I know it gets expensive to go out to theaters.
Theater's not cheap.
Yeah, theater's not cheap. It is starting small and being around artistic directors and actors and meeting directors and all that. Right now we live in this era of Zoom has really taken off since the pandemic.
Sure.
And just being able to workshop stuff before it goes up. I mean, you meet some actors and get them all together, and then you do a Zoom reading, and then say you write a play that has 7 characters in it, and then you find a director that you like to just go, hey, you know what? Can we get some opinions on it? All of a sudden, it's gone from a play that's sitting in front of you that only you have. Now, immediately in that 1-2 hour block that you have right there, it's gone from 1 to about 10 people now that know the work that you have. And then, you can also put links on there to where people can watch and comment and, try to tell all of those people that are involved, hey, if you got other theater people that might want to throw out opinions or something like that, by all means, here's the link. I mean, you can reach a lot of people that in years past you couldn't do it. And just where we're at right now, just in the ability to develop work is incredible, I think.
I found it to be absolutely amazing, especially since the pandemic kicked in. But with the advent of Zoom, I've connected with people from Australia, the UK, I'm connecting with you right now, and you're in Denver.
Right.
Okay. So we're making this connection. Yeah.
We're looking at one another right now.
Exactly.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's a boon, and I love Zoom. So I mean that enables us to maintain a contact or at least meet each other. Okay, because I've been hearing about you for years.
Really?
Literally. Oh, wow. Next Stage Press, Gene Kato, the whole thing, especially on Facebook. I was just published by Next Stage Press, and Gene Kato was helping me, and what you've done for so many of these playwrights is give them a chance to get their work known. Okay, putting it in book form has a weight to it that just sending out a PDF to random theaters everywhere else. Now this is different. This is published. This is in book form. It makes a difference. How many playwrights do you have in your roster?
Oh my gosh. I did the math the other day on the number of actual acting editions that we have that are going on. That doesn't include the number of small plays that are available to be licensed independently, because there's a whole bunch of them that are mixed in on some of these. But we have 601 acting editions before this next release that's coming out.
Okay.
And then so you probably figure, oh my gosh, if you break all of that up, I'll bet we have 200 plus playwrights that are all put in there, because a lot of these collections will have 6 or 7 playwrights that are kind of mixed on all that. And then they've got these individual little 10-minute plays that either can be licensed together in a whole evening, or they could be pulled out. And if somebody just wants to license one out. So I think title-wise, there's probably about another 200 of the little plays and stuff that are mixed in. So Next Stage Press right now probably has about 200 plus writers and over 800 individual licensable things, that can go out. And that averages about, we release about 15 plays a month, and we release 9 months out of the year. So, on the whole, we're about 130, 135 plays a year that that roll out, and then they'll keep on going. So, because I'm trying to do that, and to just kind of keep it consistent, because again, it is I have the benefit of not having the overhead like Broadway licensing and Concord and all that has to do, so I can continue to do that, and it continues to grow our family of writers, and it's one of those things that I kind of look at this whole thing like a pebble that's dropped in a lake. Those ripple effects that go out. Every new play that comes in is another pebble that's dropped in, and more ripples go out. And so the the hope
got a
is
very busy lake going there.
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, it's not a lot of downtime, and it is. But it's hopefully for the greater good.
Oh, I can absolutely assure you it is. As one of your published playwrights, it is. How many people are in Next Stage Press?
Me.
Okay.
That's it. I've got a couple of. I have a couple of writers. I have a couple of readers that will go in and will help in the evaluation process. But every play that goes out, I make it.
All these plays, all these playwrights, all these contracts, all these details, all these requests for proper formatting, which I'm not even going to get into because that's probably a nightmare. And it's just you. How do you stay sane? Or are you sane? I'm assuming.
Probably not. If you're going to theater, it's probably not. There's probably an element of it that you get to be a glutton for punishment. But it's all right. The thing is one of the things that I really push out, and I try to do this with the new playwrights that come in, is the whole process is not terrible, provided that the things that people are supposed to do, they do them when they're supposed to be done.
Right.
Because I can go through, if someone sends me, we harken back to one of the biggest things is formatting.
Sure.
If everybody follows the formatting like they're supposed to be doing it, and they don't fight me on it, which I've had a couple of plays that have come in that I'm just like, why are you fighting me on the formatting? It needs to be like this. Because as far as I'm concerned, formatting is not art. It may be art to a lot of people, but on this end of it, when you get into here, we're trying to sell a book, and we're trying to sell it for the cheapest amount so that we can turn around and pass the money back on to you so that you can continue. Now, you may not make a lot of money, but you'll have a little extra money. And, then you can, that'll help offset hopefully some of the costs that you have, whenever you're going into, or if you want to go out to dinner, or if you have extra money on a trip, all of this. Yeah. But the more, the last few years, ink, cardstock, paper, all of that stuff, the cost of all that stuff has gone up. I don't want to sit here and these things, I'll show this, these things right here, 9 times out of 10, yeah, they may end up, I use this term a lot when I go into this. Sometimes if we do this right, this thing is probably going to end up in the backseat of a car with a muddy footprint on it at some point with pages falling out of it, because it's not a trade paperback. It's an acting edition. It's meant to be used and discarded, because it's going to be, and if somebody wants to keep one for their shelf, they can always get another one. These things are their workhorse books. I think a lot of times people confuse the acting edition versus the trade paperback. They are two completely different things. We don't publish trade paperbacks. We publish acting editions.
Yes.
You want to try to make these things as compact as you possibly can, so that an actor is not having to fumble over many, many pages while they're trying to get off book.
Right. And it fits in your back pocket too.
Exactly. And then it's done. And then, they move on with it. If they want another one, I'll be more than happy to get them another one if it completely falls apart. But
one of my favorite things is looking through my old acting editions and looking at my notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can write in these things. You can. Like you say, they're workhorses.
Yeah, and it is nice. Now that we've gone to the glue binding, there's a little bit more white space over here.
Word space, yeah.
To take notes on, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you go back do you look at yours a lot? You go back?
I do every once in a while, yes, because it's interesting to see what my interpretation might have changed over the years. I've done Malvolio a couple of times, 12th Night. and the two productions were markedly different. But I go back and I look at the books,
Yeah.
and the notes are different, the intentions are different, and it's interesting to see where I was at that particular point as an actor
Right.
and what choices I chose to make or what choices I went with the director on. But getting back to formatting, I don't think a lot of people realize how important it is. I was in publishing. One of my hundreds of careers before this was in publishing, and I was a typesetter and I did books. Formatting is one of the most consistently important things because it all adds up to a professional look. If somebody sees something that is crappily formatted, something inside of them is going to turn off and they're going to put the book down. They're not going to go back to it. But if they see something that is consistent with playwriting style, they will give it a gravitas that it deserves.
Exactly. And and one of the big things with this is I'm trying to make the interior of our books look consistent. Some of the ones I'll go, okay, I'll give you a little bit, like you may come up with, there may be some sort of weird thing that goes in there, like every now and then you'll have someone that'll recite a poem, or you'll have someone that will have a song that will go in there that it messes up what we would normally look at, like especially if somebody is interspersing, when you have like a dual dialogue that goes in and somebody has a poem or is singing a song, and then another actor has a line that has to do it, that has to speak like on the third line of the song or whatever it is, so that it kind of blends like it's supposed to. That can be a real unbelievable pain. And I understand that from time to time we have to kind of fudge what we normally would do formatting wise in order to make that clear when actors are using it. But 99% of the time, I think it was Paula Vogel. Boy, if she ever hears this, I'm gonna get all kinds of crap for it. But she was the one that, there was something that came out about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, whenever she actually told playwrights, something along the lines of, your white space is completely necessary. And I'm sitting there looking at that going, that is spoken by someone that absolutely does not have to pay for the paper.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
I mean, because I have had scripts that I fought with performers on, and say, like, when they sent it to me, say the script was somewhere around the neighborhood of like 92 pages.
Yeah.
Okay, which that's still a lot longer than I'd like to do, but okay, 90 pages, we can kind of deal with that. I went back in. We finally got through this whole thing. I convinced the playwright. I said, all right, look, I said, we've got to get this down. I mean, we're putting white space in here for absolutely no reason at all, other than you thought it was cool whenever you wrote it. We got the script down to in the low 70s. And that took 20 pages of script out. And then you amortize that over every copy of the script that's made. That
adds up.
Oh, it adds up like crazy. Your script can be, between 40 and 50 copies of that script, and all of a sudden you're pushing, half a ream of paper.
Exactly.
And that's on that one script. So that's my
well, that's the thing you have to worry about. Most of us playwrights have absolutely no idea.
Right.
We think in artistic terms, and I'm doing stage quotes here. Because
I like the stage quotes.
There we go. Stage quotes.
You've got going.
Air quotes.
Like two rabbits looking at me from the side of your screen.
Exactly. Hello. Yeah. But it's not something that they've ever had to worry about. So that kind of issue for you is part and parcel of dealing with people who only think in one way, and you have to ground them into reality, so to speak. And the issue comes up is how much are you impacting my creative vision by making this thing format in this particular? It's wow. Yeah, I do not envy you those conversations.
And the thing is, it's the big question that nobody can ever give me an answer on. Is it's like, yeah, but I understand that, but this is meant to be memorized. We're arguing over something that someone is going to memorize the entire thing, and then this thing that you're fighting with me on will be sitting on a table while they're out on the stage. It's not even like something that it's not like they're carrying the book with them the entire performance, and they're going to. It is meant to be committed to memory and then discarded.
Yeah.
throughout the rest of the run. And then, yeah, you come back to it every now and then to refer if you're stumbling over a line or something like that that goes and you just need to, a refresher.
Sure.
Absolutely. But it's meant to be memorized. And we're arguing over what something looks like on the page on something that's meant to be.
It's all a matter of interpretation and your point of view on that interpretation. Let's switch gears here just a little bit, because you are a playwright yourself, and you have written dozens of plays for the longest time, and you've been in theater for a very long time. So there are way more profitable ways of putting words on paper. Poets make more than we do, I think. And choosing theater is a life choice. It's a belief. It's almost a religion, I would say. What got you into theater? What made you start putting words down on paper that other people would have to memorize?
Well, let me back this up because I think you're going to like this answer. I think a lot of people like this. So when I was in high school, I grew up in Houston, and I had to pick an elective. I said, all right, you know what? I narrowed it down to 2 because we lived on an acre of land. And my mom and grandparents and all them, they had always had horses and all that stuff back there. And I said, all right, you know what? I've got 2 that I can go to. I can either go into drama, which because I like movies and television and all that stuff, I go into drama, or I can go into agriculture because we have the space. And it came the night before, and I said, all right, I'm going to flip a coin, and whichever one it comes up on, that's what I'm going to do. So I took a quarter, and I said, all right, heads, it's going to be drama, tails, it's going to be ag. I flipped it up into the air, put it in my hand, flipped it over, and my mom and my stepfather were standing there. I said, I want the 2 of you to be here to witness this so that I have verification of it. I lifted it up, and it was heads, and I walked straight over, and I marked drama on there, and that was it. Never even looked back, never did anything because I figured it was fated. And so I did that.
That's a lot to put the rest of your life on, a coin toss.
Yeah. It is, but I literally was the way that I did it because I couldn't make a decision. It was one of those things that I had whittled it all the way down to the final 2, and I did not know which path that I wanted to go down. So I said, all right, well, we'll let the fates decide on that. And then I got involved with drama department, and we did a lot of scene work, and when I was in high school, and I was like, well, I think one time we had to write a scene or create a scene on our own. So I sat down and I created the scene. And, my scene partner and I created this scene from scratch and wrote it all out, wrote the lines, did it. It went over very well. And I just, when we were, getting feedback from it, everybody was saying how much, they enjoyed the, what we came up with. And the creative process just kind of bit me at that point. And then I started going, all right, well, let's see what other stories that I could do. So I just started crafting out my first play, it was called Chronicles of a Teenage Father. It is lost to time. There are no copies of it anymore. But ironically enough, I handed that over on a New York trip my senior year. I walked to the old Samuel French offices that were down on 25th Street.
Sure.
And went up took that little elevator up to that little bitty bookstore that was up at the top, and the desk was there and all that. And I asked Lawrence Harbison, who was he was the editor at the time there. He came up, and I introduced myself and handed him my script, and he said, all right, let me tell you exactly what you need, because there's no self-addressed stamped envelope here. There's no, there was nothing. I just handed him the play. I went to New York. I was going to give it to Lawrence Harbison, and I did. But then I learned a lot from him there. That was my first foray into that. And he is was good friends and working with Don Nigro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of a sudden, this was probably about 2.5 years ago, I got an email that just dropped into my email box. And it was from Lawrence Harbison. And he had just kind of reached out to, Next Stage Press and all that. And then I started talking to him. I just said, you're not going to remember this, and I recounted that story, and we had a good laugh over that via email. So I credited Lawrence Harbison to putting me down the path of exactly what I needed to do to continue if I was going to, continue to submit scripts. And
it's nice when people take the time to actually school you and give you good advice.
He was great. And, he was a very busy man back then. And, running that place, and to take the 10 minutes that it took to just come and explain to this high schooler he gave me, they didn't, it was my very first play. There was no way they were going to publish that. But even though he didn't have to take it, and because it wasn't submitted the way that it was. And then that kind of kindness that was shown to me by somebody that was in a position of being able to evaluate my work, probably over the course of the year, whenever I started this company, for getting my own work out there, it was important for me to show that same kindness to everyone else, and at least leave the door open. Because I've had a lot of people that have said, you know what, you need to take this stuff from agents. You need somebody else to vet it, because you have to have somebody vet these works. Otherwise, you're going to be buried. And yeah, I am going to be buried. There's over 500 plays that are in the Next Stage Press queue right now, waiting to be evaluated. But it's the kind thing to do, and as far as business is concerned, there's so much that, and I get it. I mean, we get the whole thing. When you're dealing with all of these contracts, like Broadway licensing and Concord are, that's a lot of work on a lot of days, and they don't have the time, because they're so busy with all of these other things. So if Next Stage Press can step in and show kindness to writers everywhere, if it's a little bit more work on my back, then so be it.
Well, it's appreciated, because you've been kind to me on 2 occasions. I've got 2 plays in your roster, including my very first play, which I wrote 32 years ago, which the original text came out to 96 pages, because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I thought, stage direction should take up at least 2 pages, repeatedly. And you are printing Headstrong for me, and I've gotten it down to, I think, 42 pages, 44 pages. But that's over.
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. If another 30 years, it'll probably be 10-page play, but who knows? But yeah, this is a business where you need to be kind to people, because it's so risky, and there's so many no's out there, and there are so many disappointments, and there's so much hard work that goes into playwriting. And this as a playwright. I've read a few of your plays, and I've looked over synopses of your others, and I'm amazed where a lot of your ideas particularly come from, like Hamlet, Prince of Pork. One of these days, I swear, I want to see those Orthodox Jewish wolves.
Oh, we had a production of that here in Denver that I was a part of, and let me tell you, those Orthodox Jewish wolves, they were good for quite a few laughs in that show. The actors just went crazy with them, and one of the actors that played the lead player, he was Jewish. Some of the stuff that he came up with, I don't know. We had a couple of actors that were Jewish that came and saw the show that I've known for years around here. Mm-hmm. One of them was an actress around town. She came up and she grabbed my arm on the way out, and she went, "Gene, I was not prepared for that." And that's all she said, and she just left the theater.
Well, between that and the dancing pork chop, which is still, I'm not even going to tell you what's going on in my mind when I just think of that. It's amazing. I want to touch on one last subject, because I know you're a very, very busy person. And Crystals of Nevin. You are a writer of a YA fantasy novel series. Let's talk about that for a little bit, because that's not theater.
It's not, and it's that one has taken a while. It's still sitting here. I mean, it is in need of. I need to go back through it again, and do one more pass and one edit on it. I finished it in 2018, I think it was, and it had been kicking around since like 2007, and I slowly had started working on it. And basically, what it is there is a there is a kingdom that had a castle that we run into at the very beginning that has been under siege, and there's a portal that is in the castle that is powered basically by these 7 crystals, and these 7 crystals represent the 7 different lands of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, it had been said that this portal, everyone knew it existed, but it was something that only existed basically in childhood tales. And it just comes to find out that in this one castle, it actually exists. And the castle has been sacked by a man that has a huge backstory that will be revealed in later versions, in later books.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he's only known as the man with the yellow eyes. What happens is he takes these crystals, and the king and queen and all that, each crystal, they've been thrown into the porthole with each one of these different crystals. Like you have one that is clear, that sends to this ice region, one that's red that sends to a volcanic and fire region. There's a region that's desert. There's one that is kind of swamp, one that's forest. So what's happening is there's a group of characters. They're all brought together, and they have to try to gather everyone that has been scattered at this point, and then make their way back to the castle in order to try to take the castle back.
Yeah.
And but the first story that we have, this one is referred to as green because it follows the green crystal, and it takes place predominantly in a forest.
Cool.
So
Can't
it's
wait to read this. Sounds
it's
great.
about it's like the whole thing was I wrote it in did a lot of research on that, exactly how long your average fantasy novel would be, and they said it's 90,000 words. So this is like a 385 page book, the first one.
That seems about right. Yeah.
So the Crystals of Nevin. It's I love it. I mean, I think it's it was a good change for me from being so dialogue and acting. Here you go. We'll go back to white space centric as far as plays go. And one of the things that trying to get back into, really getting into where I can write prose better. And so that's kind of it as I make this next pass on it. By the way, if anybody wants to read it, I can send reader copies out to you just so you can give me your ideas. Trying to figure out exactly where the weakness in the prose are, because again, trying to jump from dialogue, to writing only in prose is a little more challenging than
it is. Yeah.
I realized.
I would hope that one would inform the other.
Well, I think that the dialogue passages that the characters have are probably fine in the book. Yeah. Their conversations, I think, are fine. I think a lot of it is just making sure that whenever I'm describing a locale or describing what a character looks like or something, just that I can get better at using heightened descriptive languages in order to kind of set the scene. Because again, in theater, we try to avoid the exposition,
right,
description, without over, because here we have designers and stuff that come up with stuff all the time whenever plays are done. And then, you jump back and then you go into prose and you're like, well, wait a minute, I know what it looks like in my head, but is it coming out like I'd hoped it would be? So that's the challenge.
It's the process. Process. Gene Kato, thank you so very, very, very much for taking time out of your excessively busy schedule, because you sound like one of the busiest people I've ever seen.
Thank you very much, George. I appreciate it.
It's really been a joy talking to you, and I've wanted to meet you for a very, very long time. I had to say thank you. And what you're doing next, Stage Press, truly is a gift to so many playwrights for a number of reasons. I'm not saying you're validating all of us, but you're giving us something that. So one of the things we've always wanted is to see our names in print, to see a book out there, and it means a lot. So thank you.
I will say one last thing on this. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that really on this that I'm the lucky one in this, because I had this idea about the plays across the nation, and it's been validated with the quality of the work that I've received, because I think all of you are all of you are so talented, and we have some really talented writers out there that the world has not heard of yet. I always like to put that yet after there. And it's just a joy watching these plays come across the queue, because there's some talent. There's some talent out there.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to On Stage, Off Stage. On Stage, Off Stage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org, and also on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project or interest, or know of someone in the theater world who'd make good chat, by all means, send us a note at onstageoffstagepodcast@gmail.com. Our theme music is Don't Worry, Be Frappy by the composer Max Dickinson. You can find a lot more of Max's magnificent music on SoundCloud. I'm George Sapio. Thanks once again for listening, and please be kind to those with whom we share this rock. And as always, happy theatering to all of you.